Hello, it's 4:20. Let's get high. Getting high is what we call it when we go to the Torah. It's called Aliyah, because you go up to the Torah. And even the land of Israel is considered the highest land in the world, even though obviously in elevation it's not very high. It slopes down into the sea. But the high it means is something different. It's not physically high any more than Abraham, who came to the world 4,000 years ago, was considered a giant, not because of his physical stature, but because of who he was. Anyways, I got this new book, and the name of the book is actually 666. It's a Hebrew book written over 100 years ago, in 1906. It was 1905, the end of 1905. It was going to be 1906. Whatever. It was, the interesting thing is, see, and historians wonder why it was that Einstein waited 6 months before publishing his, ultimate theory, which I guess can be, reduced down to E equals mc squared, that E is energy, and the energy equals M, matter, how much substance you have, times C, which is the constant, squared, meaning times itself, like 186 miles, I think that's miles a minute. I don't remember. I think, or a second or something, like it must be a second, and squared. So it's a very large number. And that from that formula, they could, realize that if they were to make a bomb, it would just take a very small amount of material to release a huge explosion, and eventually that became the atom bomb. And Einstein published it exactly 1 week before the Hebrew date of 5,666. Because Einstein recognized, a man of numbers, he recognized that this date, which, just happened to fall in the time of this great discovery, that he didn't want to do it on Rosh Hashanah, but like the week before. And the interesting thing is, see, that a week after Rosh Hashanah, 5,666, a Rebbe in Russia began writing this discourse, 666. And in this discourse, he begins, not right at the beginning, he begins, with the very seminal beginning of creation. And a few chapters into it, he gives us the secret of light, which is interesting because that's what his theories about light and where everything reduced down to E equals mc squared, where it comes down to E equals mc squared, is that light has this dual nature where it pulses between like matter and ray. What's the difference between matter and ray? Well, matter is subject to gravity, and ray is not. You can go right through matter. And up until Einstein, everyone thought that that sunlight, that light, was just a wave. Proved in his theories not, and that it was also subject to gravity. And if they would measure the ray of sun around the moon when it eclipses the sun, the ray of light around the moon when the moon eclipses the sun, they will see that the gravity pulls on the ray of light, and they checked it and they saw it was true, which meant that light was not a ray. And this has to do with this kind of dual nature of light, which is what the Rebbe in his discourse of 666 discusses in such detail, such mind-blowing detail, which is like, kind of like quantum physics, where he goes right into the essence of things and explains the difference between essence and the first beginnings of actuality, which is really nothing but what's called nitiya. And nitiya is an inclination, and the first movement in the essence is called nati velo nati, to incline or not to incline. And what is an inclination? It's called the yirtza, that it's a it's what brings about will, and will directs. See, and this is just that it's like constantly going out and coming back, but there's no movement because it happens instantaneously. And we see this exactly with an atom. That's how an atom operates, and there's no way to know where the electron is next going to be measured, because it appears to be kind of random, which is being expressed through this redirecting. I mean, it's sort of like when you're driving a car, you're always kind of, kind of the word I want, but kind of like, you're always kind of moving the wheel a little bit, always trying to rectify, what there is, and that's what the atom is doing, and that's what makes them say that the electron goes at the speed of light. And it's really, because that is the constant of the universe. But the Rebbe says that this is not considered motion. This is only really considered an inclination. And it brings about will. And will is really what directs that atom to take a particular stand. And see, that's how God makes everything move, is by moment, doing this, to each atom. And what is an atom? Where the atoms come from? So, because it's explained in the Zohar, and that creation was made through engraving, through chipping away, through breaking, and all these shards became stars, which also broke. And it broke, and everything broke down until things were reduced down to atoms, to the lowest bit of essence. And that's why the atom is everywhere the same, everywhere in the universe, because the atoms didn't just come out of plasma. The atoms are sparks from, Or Ein Sof, light without end. It was out without end because it's a quiescent light that's perfect. There's no like kind of, leftover ends. Everything is perfect. And it's in that Or Ein Sof, light without end, where is embedded our creation, physical and spiritual. And the whole movement, and why the stars, the astronomers see that the stars are moving faster and faster, is because that they're being attracted by the Or Ein Sof. And the closer they get to the Or Ein Sof, the higher they become, the less, you can't say physical, but mamushis, the less existence, the closer they come to the Or Ein Sof, and the faster they can go, until finally comes back and is reunited with the Or Ein Sof, but not without a personality. That's what we all get from being in creation. When eventually we go back and are reunited with Or Ein Sof, we will not lose our personality. We will still be who we are, but we will be in the Or Ein Sof. Well, all right. So I have a few questions. First from Carl. I don't know about the Snow White story. I just, nothing in Torah. This is somewhere else. Carol asks, where is free choice? And a free choice is really what we're talking about. It's inside every atom. That when the person chooses to go in a particular way, that every atom in that body obeys. You don't have some atoms that say, fuck off, man, I'm going this way. They all go the same way. Everything is goes according to the will. And the greatest choice we have to make in life is simply that God, we should choose to include God in our life. That's the main thing. If a person does that, all other choices will sort of come from that. And Wesley says, how is the bread? I only see one person on, so maybe Wesley left already. How is the bread? Well, I have no idea what that means, man. How is the bread? Maybe it's lingo for something, but it seems like Wesley left. So that's that. All right. Anyways, I thought this stuff was really, really interesting. I wrote a whole essay about it this morning. And I just find those two things so fascinating, that Einstein would publish his greatest theory a week before 666, and this Rebbe would publish his book, or start writing his book actually, a week after Rosh Hashanah. When he started publishing, he published it like week by week. I think he'd actually go out and read it, and everyone would write it down. Creation says that I'm disconnected. And people who saw my fascination with this stuff, could not understand why, because there's really no practical use for this information. And I have to absolutely agree there is very little practical use for this other than sort of wowing people. Nonetheless, I mean, my objective was to try to understand the truth, and I didn't feel that I could understand the truth without understanding the beginning. Yeah, I met and studied cuneiform because it was an ancient language, and she wanted to understand where everything began. And I don't know if that was a very good choice, but it was her choice. But we kind of have the same idea, the same reason here for making the choice. And and the deeper I got into all of this, the more that I realized that this is really the essential information that really everyone has to understand. But but we just don't see how. So that's what sort of I've been doing in my writing and stuff, is showing how this information is completely relevant, probably more relevant than any other information. So, you know, and that's why I write these books. And even though I haven't gotten much of a audience, um, even though I haven't gotten much of an audience, but if you haven't seen it, please go to my website and check it out, dovidhouse.com. And there you'll see like a press release. And so this press release was released, and apparently I haven't seen actually the numbers yet, but apparently a lot of people responded to it, which is really good. I mean, they picked it up and they're going to put it in their publication, which can only be good because hopefully that means some of those people will buy it and will read it. And that's more important than buying it. They will read it, and by reading it, it will perhaps lead them to read other things of mine, which will explain in more depth or in a different way. It's not really in more depth, and and to really begin to understand these concepts, and and through that, we'll really be able to see through the darkness. I was thinking about it today. It's like if you're in a dark room and you're kind of trying to find your way, and you bump into this and you feel that, and you're just not quite sure everything is, and suddenly you turn on the light and you see, oh, that was a chair, oh, that was a desk, oh, that was the door was open, but in the dark it could be anything. So that's why we have so many conspiracy theories these days, because people are so in the dark that anything can be something. And the importance of bringing Zohar into the world at this time. Zohar translates as brilliance. And it's enough light, even a little bit transfused through me into English, trying to explain these things, is enough light that you can see what's going on around you and see what the darkness is and see what the light is, what the lie is, and be able to break through that shell of a lie, which is covered the earth and like plated the earth, uh, made this shell around the earth. It was sort of like a cloak, uh, they would have a death, they have a, I forget what it's called. Mm, little baby Zohars. Well, that's a nice idea. Here's the thing. Zohar means brilliance because it is the essence of the light. It is that place of essence where things go from one to the other. And the Rebbe explains of 666 how light, after this idea of inclining, comes out of that a light which moves in Ratzi B'tshuv, running and returning, this pulsing light. That's how light is, how electricity is. And that's the basis of time, which we see that's what I limit of action, of movement. So therefore confines movement, gives movement a limit, and that's what allows time to happen. As this is going back and forth. And so I don't know. Both of these things were. So I want to say about what they call light is different from atoms are photons. That's where this process happens in the photons, and in a sense, each one is a little Zohar, and it can light up everything because it's essence. And that's what we need in our time. That's why the Zohar promises that these words written, 2,000 years ago by Rabbi Shimon, or one would say they're really, really written 700 years ago by Rabbi Shimon, who lived 2,000 years ago, that were for our time, 700 years later in our time, when, they think that God is spiritual, and others think that life just happens, and people are so in the dark. And the Zohar can really, illuminate, enlighten people. What does enlighten mean? I mean, it doesn't mean you reach some great, spiritual level, but rather that you see light. It lightens up what you see around you, and you see the truth, and that's being enlightened. That the light comes out of the eyes, come out of the dark part of the eyes. And that's what lights out, illuminates the world, because you see it in an illuminated way. But people who just, see the darkness, they're really blind. And in Hebrew or in Aramaic, and in the Zohar, the Talmud, a blind person is called Sagior, too much light. And that's what people are blind in our time, that there is, instead of seeing the Rebbe side of light, they see the other side of light, the Einsteinian side of light that can, push us to the end of the universe. And see, without connecting that to the other side, to the spiritual side, like, why are we here? What is really the metaphor of what's going on, not just about how we can utilize it. And so that's really what we need to focus on, is how we utilize this knowledge to really change our perception about what life is about. Because life is not about trying to conquer the universe. I mean, that's just really stupid. I mean, be good if a person can conquer their own nature. And it's just kind of a cover for some real, malign activity or malicious activity, that's, that you don't know what it is. The problem, you don't know what it is, and you think it's worse than it is. They have more power than they do. We don't know, but the whole thing just kind of really sucks, and we shouldn't be opposing ourselves. We see now, because we're all connected, you can, be in communication with anybody in the world. And uh, and we see that we're all good people. There's no really bad people in the world. There's some people in some bad situations, but there's no bad people. And we're all really the same human being. We have the same desires. We have the same goals. Most people. There are individuals have very individualistic goals, but in general, people want to be part of a family, whether that means an organic family or it means just a family of friends, of workers. We want to feel part. And and so that's why we because we do want to like feel a part of everything. So and wherever you are, whatever the system of government of life is, one wants to participate and have this interaction and help and do good things. And these are all like really normal human things. But then you have these people who say, well, Jack, if I could corral all those people to do one work, then we could do something that no one individual could do. And that might be good if we need to build a levee, like around New Orleans. And, everyone knew New Orleans, but, it's in a basin, and if it ever got, flooded, that it would really be very dangerous. But until it happened, they couldn't afford making a good levee. And what happened with Katrina, it made a good levee. And now, exactly 16 years later, and it's interesting. Kind of 16 is like 6 and 1, which that's how the week is: 6 days of work and a day of rest. And it's like 16 years later, like it came again, something even more deadly. And we see that the engineers were right, and they were able to, to save New Orleans. Good for them, man. I mean, it's really, and have some stupid idea they can go out into outer space or something. It's just so ridiculous. So, anyways, nice hanging around, getting high, and you're welcome. Come tomorrow. It's good to get high, because when you get high, it pushes away the negativity automatically, and suddenly you just feel better. Sort of like you went up in a cloud. That's how Moshe went up to the mountain in a cloud. The people lived in a cloud. We're cloud people. We lived in a cloud for 40 years. And bread rained down from the heavens. And we drank water that rolled from a rock that rolled with us, and gave rock in 12 streams to each of the 12 tribes.